Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from podweather.com and Internet Partnership Radio with an update on the tropics this evening. And you can see the last few days, for sure, Fay has made that track, and we've seen it on the 15th start here in Hispaniola, and now 5 days later it's centered just off of Cape Canaveral and stalled right near the Florida coastline, and that is a very nasty situation with a lot of heavy rain. Again, the track was pretty much over land for a very long time, and that's why it's never really been able to become a hurricane. And there's a slight chance that maybe it could wrap, but that is unlikely at this point in time. Here's the latest as of 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Tropical Storm Fay. It was at 29.0 north, 80.3 west. Winds were up a bit to 60, gusting to 65 since it's offshore. It was nearly stationary, 993 millibars, so the pressure has come down about 4 millibars in the last 3 hours or so. So it is slowly intensifying as it's over the Gulf Stream. But note the 5 p.m. track had it making a track like that, and note the initialization as of 8 p.m. is a bit further to the south and west of that, so we might see that track extended just a little bit further south. But keep in mind, any further south would take it back out over the Gulf of Mexico by Thursday night, Friday, and that would result in strengthening as long as the center stays over water. So if the system were to somehow make any northern movement, it could come inland in Georgia, maybe a little bit further north, but pretty much stay over land throughout. However, if it does start to move west and even west-southwest under a building ridge, there's a chance it could come out over water. The worst case would be for this to stay, a decent structure over land and come out at the southern edge of this cone and stay over water for the longest period of time. Then it would not only have a chance to become a hurricane, but even a stronger hurricane over the warm Gulf waters. That does not seem likely at this point in time. We do have these watches and warnings out, tropical storm warnings out along the swath of coastline here, and you could definitely see those tropical storm force winds extend out a good bit, but they are not yet on shore. They've been pounding Florida, they moved off, but they're going to come right back on in and continue to batter the area. You can see the infrared satellite loop here, definite building of the cloud tops on the eastern side of the circulation, and it clearly shows land has an influence. You can see we have convection blowing up in the Gulf and over the Atlantic, but where there's land there is no convection. That wasn't the case yesterday when the system tried to become a hurricane as it was moving inland, but you can see right there is where the center of circulation is, sitting right off the coastline there. Based on the movement, it should start to make that westward progression back inland. From there, if it continues west into the Gulf or stays over land, we just don't know at this point in time, but you can see definitely a very favorable upper level pattern over the top of Fay at this point. Now here are the computer models, and again, most of the models do turn it back west. You can see the H-Wharf brings it back out over the water, then has another landfall near Apalachicola, the Big Bend area here, and then brings it back off again and heads more west. So we would actually be talking about 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 landfalls in the U.S. with Fay if that were to happen. Unsure if that track pans out, but something generally back to the west is expected at this point. Any loss of latitude would result in it coming back out over water, so we're going to have to watch that carefully. You can see the general model guidance spread is all over the place. The GFS model we've been watching it, takes it all the way up in my region here in Ohio. You can see the no gaps ain't too far behind, while we do have the GFDL down here in Arkansas and Louisiana. So there is such a wide spread that there is a lot of uncertainty in the track of Fay. Now, as I mentioned, the upper level winds see this anticyclone, this high pressure built in, very, very favorable right over the top of it, especially ventilating that eastern side, and that's why we have such good flow over the top. And as long as the center's over water, it could strengthen. So it's all dependent on whether or not it stays over water long enough, or if it moves back out over water, as to whether or not we get strengthening. You can see that better here. Again, conditions should be very favorable in the Gulf of Mexico. So if Fay does start moving west from this point, it would be well over the Gulf of Mexico, so we have to watch that carefully. But again, a northwesterly component and a curve should occur, so it might keep it generally near the coast, which means it could keep pooling up moisture and keep that rainfall going, some of which should be beneficial to some areas. Now, we've been watching the last several days our Invest, which has completely fizzled out here, but it's still a vorticity we're going to have to watch as it moves west. But this has flared up the area to the south and east of that, and we're going to have to watch this one because this is building and moving generally west, and we'll see if anything happens with that. You can see behind it another large wave leaving Africa, and it is approaching late August now, so things are only going to get more active as we're less than a month away from the peak of hurricane season. In the western Pacific, we've been watching this storm move quickly across the basin, and it battered the Philippines, and now it's sitting south of Taiwan and China. This is Typhoon Nuri, and winds as of 3 a.m. JST were at 90 miles an hour, gusting to 115. It's moving west at 13. That should turn north, become a Cat 2, and slam into China as a Category 1 or 2 typhoon, and that will be pretty nasty. I'm Mike Naso from podweather.com and Internet Partnership Radio. Stay tuned.